The Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence is now in session. I am Madam Chairwoman Catherine Stengel from the great state of Oklahoma. This committee will be exploring the subject of whistleblowing versus national security and the actions of Edward Snowden and the NSA. The committee would like to recognize Mr. Anthony D. Romero of the ACLU.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
The committee would like to recognize Mr. Glenn Greenwald.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
The committee recognizes former NSA Director, Ms. Catherine Alexander.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
The committee would like to recognize Honorable Secretary of State, Mr. John Kerry.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman.
The committee would like to recognize Ms. Laura Portress.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman.
Please rise. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. The chair recognizes Mr. Greenwald. Mr. Greenwald, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As most of you know, especially from my bestseller, No Place to Hide, I'm Glenn Greenwald. I'm a former journalist for The Guardian, and I have a brief opening statement on my position and involvement with Edward Snowden and the leaks from NSA. So even before the leaks from Edward Snowden, I've been vehemently against the increased NSA surveillance on the basis that it is without oversight, inhibits our right to free expression, and is without legitimate cause or need. Back in 2007, in reaction to the wireless wiretapping law, I talked on C-SPAN about how the government has been getting more and more power without regulation. I talked about the extent of the surveillance and how we were on a slippery slope. Because many of you did not see this as a major threat at the time, we swept it under the rug, especially some of the members on this committee. What Snowden has done is he has brought light to this issue and gave it legitimacy. My role as a journalist is not to give comfort. I'm not a therapist or a nurse or a pastor. I think one of the most crucial parts of journalism is to constantly poke and pry at convention and orthodoxy and to challenge assumptions that people are just implicitly accepting. Not just even if it makes people uncomfortable, but especially then. I think you need, always, to have every kind of human belief being challenged and scrutinized and put under a microscope. That's an important part of what journalism is about. And from what journalists find, the people should decide from such facts as to whether or not this is okay. From the reaction to the leaks, it appears that the country is not okay with being watched at all times. We are getting to the point where the rights of our nation are being flushed because the NSA can get away with it. This is the chance to regulate the surveillance. The surveillance has changed from protecting our citizens from terrorism to protecting our government from its citizens. The excessive amounts of observation crush creativity and the ability to grow on the internet. We fear constant retaliation and we don't explore our identities or others in a safe atmosphere. The surveillance today is bad enough, but without limits set, it's bound to only get worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwald. We are now going to open up questions to the committee members. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of North Carolina.
Mr. Greenwald, you were individually chosen by Edward Snowden to write about and publicize the documents that he obtained while working for the NSA. Why do you think that Edward Snowden decided to approach a journalist rather than Congress or the government to disclose what was going on with the NSA?
Snowden could have released the documents if he wanted to. However, he feared government retaliation and he realized he wasn't qualified to divulge that information to the masses. He could have uploaded the documents to the internet, he could have given it to foreign powers, but there are all sorts of things he could have done, and what he did instead was came to the journalist and said, "That's not my place." And I think there's a huge responsibility that comes to that. I consider it heroic and noble for someone of that age to be self-sacrificing in the pursuit and in defense of the political values they believe in. At the time, he was a 29-year-old with a very stable career. He had a lucrative job, a girlfriend who loved him, and a family that always supported him. For someone of that age, with all that going for him, to realize that the consequences were probably going to end up in a cage in the American penal system, I can only respect a man who would value his political beliefs that highly. He's the type of person who put his country in front of himself. And he realized that it's not about an individual, it's about himself. It's about his entire country.
Thank you. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Alabama.
Mr. Greenwald, did you know and do you deny allegations that claim that Snowden gained access to NSA documents by persuading 20 to 25 of his fellow NSA employees to give him their logins and passwords, saying he needed the information to help him do his job as systems administrator? And knowing that, would you still have chosen to publish his findings? Do you think his actions were justified?
First of all, there's a couple common misconceptions. Not all of the files received from Edward Snowden were released publicly. Also, personally, I never released a document without the aid of all my team of journalists. We spent weeks sifting and analyzing to make sure that we did not put innocent lives in danger. However, if these people had nothing to hide in the first place, there would be no reason for concern. My job is to be a journalist and report when things don't add up, or more specifically, when the people that are supposed to be protecting us infringe on our privacy. What Edward Snowden had in front of him was an opportunity, and he knew something wrong was going on. He took care of business and did what he had to do to uncover that truth.
Thank you. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Now, first off, before I begin any questioning, I gotta say, you must have some pretty big cojones to come in here today. Considering that you worked with Edward Snowden, a known traitor to this country, to leak these documents, I ought to have the FBI in here right now. But before I see how fast you can run, I think I'll let you speak. You know,
Do you have a
traitors...
question, sir?
I do have questions. My statement is not done yet, though. Okay. And may I just say that traitors like you used to hang. I hope you know the gravity of this.
All right.
All right, but anyway, my questions. It does not bother you that Snowden, instead of facing the music, has fled to Russia, a nation that has not only been and known to be antithetical to American interests, but to freedom in general?
Well, I believe Snowden was put in a situation where he had to flee the country because he had no other choice and he didn't want to face a life in imprisonment. Because I think it needs to take time for the American government to realize that what Snowden's actions were heroic and not treasonous. Also, the justification for all of this spying was after post 9/11 procedures, specifically the Patriot Act, and people being spied weren't even terrorists to begin with. Most of the spying had to do with everyday average citizens, and the connection between major industries alarmed me as well. There's possibly economic or non-NSA security reasons why some of the spying was going on. Millions of citizens' personal information, interests, records, internet history, they were all analyzed and processed. What Snowden did is he fled because he had no other choice. So.
Yes, and Nelson Mandela, I'm sure, could have fled when trying to end apartheid in South Africa, but he faced the music all the same. He went to jail because he was noble in his actions, and then when he got out, he ultimately accomplished his goal. What I instead see here is a coward fleeing to another country because he isn't noble enough to truly intend to preserve freedom. But never mind that. Let's also talk about terrorism. Have you ever seen a picture of a Taliban man? You'll note he'll look very similar to his surrounding Afghan populace. Are you not aware that perhaps terrorists operating in this country might be wearing t-shirts and jeans, and maybe even have a little American flag on a stick to blend in? These are dangerous enemies, and all it takes is for one of them to be competent, and some bomb could go blow up a bus in Times Square, or perhaps they could even detonate a bomb underneath another important building.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Greenwald. The chair recognizes former NSA Director Catherine Alexander. Ms. Alexander, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I'd like to add that it's General Alexander. But my name is General Alexander, and I am the former director of the NSA. And as the former director, I am here to testify on the issues of national security and the recent leaks of Edward Snowden. The attack on 9/11 was a tragedy. It was an attack that we didn't see, nor were we prepared for. Though we cannot change our past, we can improve our defenses for the future to ensure that history does not repeat itself. The fact remains that our enemies still exist today. They lie lurking in the shadows, plotting their next move. The growing capabilities in cyberspace illuminate these enemies and provide information that can protect our country from outside threats. With the collective efforts and pooling of information amongst commercial industries, FBI and law enforcement, and the Defense Department, We can establish a nation that is prepared for any of these threats. Following the set of laws that guide NSA decisions, we must operate lawfully to protect American civil liberties and privacy and to protect this nation in cyberspace. In order to accomplish these feats, we need trained and ready forces on the defense and offense. Considering that NSA has already stopped dozens of terrorist attacks, both domestic and abroad, our tactics have been proven successful. The actions of Edward Snowden not only hindered the advancements of our national security, but exposed our secrets. His leaks has created irreversible damage to the image and safety of the United States. Though I suspect that his motivations are connected to Russian intelligence, regardless, his actions have revealed confidential secrets to our enemies and thus has weakened the NSA's defense. As NSA commander, I believe the day Edward Snowden leaked NSA secrets was the day Edward Snowden became a traitor to this country. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We are now going to open up questions to the committee members. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Kansas.
General Alexander, in what circumstances, if any, do Americans have a right to keep their information private, and to what extent does the collection of metadata protect this right?
So the NSA only looks at Americans' information if there is a need to do so. So Americans have
That's
a right.
false.
Yeah,
That's
Americans have a right to keep their information private if they are not doing anything illegal.
You're lying to the committee.
Please let
I
Ms.
swear oath.
General Alexander continue.
So if the citizens are doing lawful actions and not breaking any laws, they have a complete right to their privacy. Thank you.
So, General Alexander, just to clarify, innocent American citizens are not under surveillance?
Correct.
And you're saying that the government does not look at metadata does not look at the metadata information unless there's reason to suspect suspicious behavior.
That is correct.
And so the NSA doesn't have time or the wish to scrutinize every American citizen, only the ones that are up to suspicious behavior.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mrs. Alexander, could you tell us how vital the information that Edward Snowden leaked? Was it safely secured and destroyed before being published by Mr. Greenwald?
Not all of it, and it was detrimental to the safety of the United States. It allowed our enemies to know how we are protecting this country, and it gives them the opportunity to bypass our security measures.
The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam. Ms. General Alexander, is there any proof that since the leaks, the terrorists have used that information against us?
That is highly classified information, and I cannot reveal that information to the public, but I can say with certainty that there has been proof that I cannot reveal, but there has been proof that it has stopped attacks. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, General Alexander. The chair now recognizes Mr. Anthony D. Romero of the ACLU.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. It is an honor of mine to appear here before you and all these distinguished members of Congress. As many of you know, my name is Anthony D. Romero. I am the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union, where our goal is to defend and preserve the individual rights and liberties guaranteed to every person in this country by our Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, which is exactly what Mr. Snowden was trying to do. Edward Snowden is a true American patriot, if not a martyr, in the sense that he took the initiative and brought to the eyes of the American people raw evidence of the constant violation of their most basic human rights from our very government, the very organization which was established to protect our fundamental freedoms. In a country that is supposed to be based around the people and their well-being, our government began to abuse their power and technology by monitoring our lives like something out of this dystopian novel. Mr. Snowden made the truth evident to his fellow citizens and did what so many before him had not only avoided, but actively tried to hide from the American people. Furthermore, Mr. Snowden woke up America to understand this topic that was essentially unknown, and for these actions, Snowden should be applauded, not vilified. He should be granted full immunity from prosecution and should be allowed to resume his life in the United States as a proud American citizen, nay, an American hero. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to open up questions to the committee members. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Massachusetts.
Mr. Romero, do you think Edward Snowden is in violation of the Espionage Act? How should whistleblowers such as Edward Snowden be treated by the U.S. government?
I don't think Edward Snowden is in violation of the Espionage Act. I think that some of the members of the committee are trying to manipulate the words of the act to make it seem as though he's at fault, and maybe if they read it, they would understand why he's not. But no, I don't think he is at fault at all. I think that he should be fully excused from any charges because he was trying to protect the people from the government. His ends justify the means.
Thank you. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Kansas.
Mr. Romero, if I told you now that surveillance has helped to prevent terrorist attacks, would you still be against it, surveillance? And do you see any benefits to targeted surveillance on potential terrorist attacks?
Obviously, I see benefits to targeted surveillance, and obviously I'm not fully against surveillance. I'm against you, as the government, lying to the American people. I'm against you withholding information from us. How do we know?
Something, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Romero, do you yield back your time to Mr. Greenwald?
Yeah, I'll yield that.
Mr. Greenwald, you have the floor.
Our stance is not no surveillance. We just want to make sure innocent American people are not being spied on and that it's being controlled and it's being regulated. That's our stance. Because after 9/11 and after the Patriot Act was completely bended and shifted into any way the NSA wanted, innocent American people are being violated.
That's false.
We are for freedom.
Excuse me? General Alexander, please wait your turn.
Mr.
You may
Romero,
continue.
Mr. Romero and Mr. Greenwald, perhaps the government hadn't revealed such prevented attacks because it's highly classified information. And what good are civil liberties when you're dead?
Are we dead, Annie?
If terrorist attacks, if we prevented terrorist attacks.
We don't know that you prevented any terrorist attacks because the government is not open with its people. It's supposed to be the
Perhaps
People's Republic.
it's highly classified information, Mr. Romero.
Yes, perhaps that information is highly classified.
I heard her say that.
Secretary John Kerry, please wait your turn. You will have time to speak. Continue, Mr. Romero.
My point being, the government needs to be open with its people. The government can't lie to its people. We're all in this together. This is America. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Romero. The chair recognizes Honorable Secretary of State, Mr. John Kerry. Secretary Kerry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I would like to also thank the other members of this permanent committee. May I proceed with my opening statement?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Following the release of nationally sensitive, confidential documents by Mr. Edward Snowden in June of 2013, I made clear my opinion that Edward Snowden is, and will continue to be, both a coward and a traitor until he returns to these United States to face trial for his actions. While clearly opinions over Mr. Snowden's actions have been received with mixed emotions by the American people, the fact of the matter is that Snowden's actions have put Americans directly in harm's way and have further violated the privacy and protection of the American people. I have the utmost faith in the American government and its ability to handle sensitive information, and therefore Snowden's actions have provided information to enemies of the state that have proved inherently detrimental to the people of this great nation. My position on Edward Snowden and his actions are clear. I have also made clear my belief that NSA surveillance, specifically regarding the common citizens of this great nation, has gone too far in certain instances. While much of the surveillance is justified, given the constant threat the United States faces from bodies around the globe, I will concede the fact that certain amounts of surveillance have occurred on autopilot, without senior officials, including myself, to verify the collection of data. While I take responsibility for these downfalls and will work towards accountability on behalf of the State Department, American citizens do not have the right to break the law of the land in the name of vigilantism. In this country, we have established a system in which citizens can bring issues to representatives to argue for their rights.
Not without retaliation.
Excuse me.
Order!
He's a flip-flop.
Excuse me.
I got you, Romero.
May I proceed?
You may continue.
Thank you. And therefore, we must prosecute those who break the law. Yes, our country was founded on self-proclaimed whistleblowers, yet any established system of government, such as the one that we have here in the United States, must rely on the legal precedents of its past. Thus, while I believe surveillance in some instances has gone too far, I also believe that Edward Snowden must be prosecuted for his crimes and for the threat that he has posed to the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now going to open up questions to the committee members. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Now, you said that you found problems with NSA surveillance going on autopilot. Could you elaborate on that specifically?
Absolutely. So, as a number of the co-witnesses have mentioned, the Patriot Act filed after the attacks on 9/11 essentially gave free rein to the government to develop programs that would surveil the American people in the name of terrorism. And while much of these programs have been successful in their actions, and despite what other members of this panel may say, there are also programs that, once initiated, have been sort of left alone by leadership in the government. That includes myself, that includes the President of the United States, and that includes members of congressional committees as well. So what I think we need to do, and what I've done on behalf of the State Department, is increase accountability. I've already made clear my belief and my stance that we need to end these programs, and we need to focus our surveillance to target those with whom it would benefit. And therefore, while some programs have gone on autopilot, I believe that the actions of someone like Mr. Snowden releasing information that can be used to catch terrorists is ridiculous. Thank you.
Nothing further.
Thanks.
Do any of the committee, yes, okay. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Kansas.
Secretary Kerry, for what reasons do you believe that the NSA has gone too far? Is there such a thing as too far when it comes to protecting the United States from terrorist attacks?
I would agree with some of the members on this co-committee that too far is when you're infringing on the basic rights of Americans. Well, protection is not guaranteed an inherent right by the Declaration of Independence or by the documents on which our country was founded. It is clear.
Fourth Amendment is.
Excuse me?
Excuse me.
I think you need to take on some constitutional law.
Mr. Kerry, Mr.
Thank
Kerry.
you.
Stay focused.
Well,
Continue.
it is clear that the average American has nothing to worry about based on our surveillance. I also feel like we need to cut back on surveillance that is infringing on our basic rights. People should have a right to know to have actual freedom of speech. The government shouldn't regulate every piece of conversation or everything that enters cyberspace. But I also believe that surveillance has proved incredibly successful in preventing terrorist attacks and in finding those who are willing to perpetrate such acts. Therefore, in terms of what's gone too far, yes, we have gone too far in terms of autopilot surveillance on the average American citizen who really has no intention of committing horrible acts. But where I think surveillance needs to remain, if not be stepped up, is in those situations where we have the potential to find people who are willing to commit acts of terror. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerry. Secretary Kerry, excuse me.
The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Alabama.
Secretary Kerry, last year you told CNN that people may die as a consequence of what this man did. This man being Snowden.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on how his actions have had a surplus of consequences and put the entirety of the American public in danger?
Absolutely. So while not all the information and documents that have been released by Snowden have been published in such papers as The Guardian and The Washington Post, the information released based on State Department filings as well as investigations done by the FBI and the NSA have determined that significant portions of the information garnered by Mr. Snowden include classified information that could inherently put American lives at risk. Well, obviously I can't go into this classified information or discuss specifically attacks that we've prevented. The information that I have as Secretary of State shows that the information Mr. Snowden has released has notified potential terrorists abroad, potential terrorist groups abroad, about the way in which we conduct security in our nation and also the way in which we examine the everyday citizen. And therefore, I believe that Snowden has given terrorists the information they need to bypass our security measures, thus causing issues for the government in that we have to act, but also causing a significant danger for the average American people, including not only our soldiers, but people here at home.
Thank you, Secretary
Thank you.
Kerry.
Thank you for your testimony, Secretary Kerry. The chair recognizes Ms. Laura Portress.
Thank you for having me today, Madam Chairwoman. I do have a brief statement regarding my position on national security and the actions of Mr. Edward Snowden. As you know, my name is Laura Poitras. I'm a documentary filmmaker, journalist, and artist. I chose to help reveal the truth about the National Security Agency alongside Edward Snowden and Mr. Glenn Greenwald here, because I believe that it is the right of all Americans to be aware of the extent to which the government intrudes on their daily lives. Edward Snowden is, in one word, a patriot, and his findings about the NSA brought truth to this nation, and I am not afraid to stand by him. I personally do not support the government being able to monitor my communications every second of the day. Government officials like John Kerry claim Snowden is Secretary John Kerry. Excuse me. Claims Snowden is a coward and a traitor, but I strongly disagree. Snowden did not betray this country. In fact, he defended his freedom and that of all Americans by exposing the truths that the government had been hiding from us all. After I made a film about the United States' involvement in the war in Iraq, which did indeed win an Oscar, as I would like to point out, I have since been labeled as a target of the United States and have been detained and questioned at the border more than 40 times upon entering this country. However, like Anthony D. Romero, I believe that Edward Snowden is brave for risking personal freedom and protection for public good. We should not be questioning and degrading Mr. Snowden, but rather praising him for revealing the secrets that Americans desperately needed to know. Edward Snowden did not open the country up to terrorism by revealing the secrets of the NSA, and although my film may be seen as controversial, by no means should Edward Snowden be labeled a traitor to this country. And so why can I stand here with confidence and say that Edward Snowden is more of a patriot than any member of the government who accuses him of treason? Because I feel that if the Founding Fathers were here with us today, it would be Edward Snowden who they would be standing behind, vouching for, and even going out with afterwards to grab a beer. The same fundamental distrust of corrupt, overly powerful government that caused our Founding Fathers to invent America exists within Snowden today and is visible in his quest to bring truth to America. His actions brought not only truth, but justice to this nation, and for that, I am forever grateful.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are now going to open up questions to the committee members. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of North Carolina.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Poitras, as you said, you were detained by the Department of Homeland Security over 40 times when traveling to the United States. Do you feel that your rights as a journalist under the First Amendment of the Constitution have been violated by the United States government?
I feel like governments, such as that of the United States, can try to silence me as they do all journalists who bring light to issues that challenge our nation's national security. However, I do not want to give off the impression that I am blindly opposed to all government actions relating to security and confidentiality, and I'm not naive, and I believe that in order to allow the government to protect us, we must warrant them a certain level of privacy. However, I do feel that it is my right as a journalist to express my opinions on any subject, and I am willing to stand strong in the face of adversaries who wish to attack me for the work that I've done to continue doing what I do in this field.
Do any committee members have any other questions? The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Florida.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Poitras, even though you knew that the United States government was vehemently seeking Snowden out to secure the documents that he stole, you still proceeded to break the law and harbor a fugitive. Why did you do so?
Well, I believed and still believe that Mr. Snowden did what was the right thing to do in this situation, and while it may not have been in the best interest of the government at the time, it was most definitely in the best interest of the nation as a whole. I supported him then, and I support him now. When Mr. Snowden approached me with what he called sensitive documents about NSA surveillance, he wanted me to publicize them, and although I was initially fearing what exposing these documents might do to me, my family, my career, I did feel that after reading them, they contained much information that was far more dramatic than I was ever prepared for in the process, and they clearly showed that the government had overstepped its boundaries on the issue of surveillance. And although the government was seeking out Mr. Snowden because they had labeled him a traitor, I felt that it was my duty to protect Snowden under belief that he was a patriot who was able to uncover the American freedoms that the government was infringing upon.
Do any committee members? Yes. Okay. The committee recognizes the representative from the great state of Massachusetts.
Ms. Poitras, you've said that the NSA's mass indiscriminate surveillance is a threat to democracy. What is your reasoning behind this statement?
I do not, as I said, I am not opposed to all government control of individuals in this country, but I do feel that there is a certain level of privacy that the American people deserve. And what I have a problem with, as Mr. Romero said earlier, is that the government was not telling the people the truth and they were trying to deceive the American public, which is not the responsibility of the government. They should be trying to protect us and being honest with the people of the United States.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Portress. We would like to thank all the witnesses for their testimony here today. I'm sure that the American people have become more informed on this issue. Please refer to the testimony of these witnesses if you have any questions. This committee will be adjourned.
My book.
What?
He said, buy my book.
All right.